What's up, everybody? It's the Tabletop Tyrant, and today we're doing our army book introduction. Today's the High Elves. This is a series where I give a brief overview of the faction's lore, and on Tuesday and Wednesday their army breakdown. In this series, my goal is to help people decide whether this army is for them or not. So that way, when Old World is out, we will all have an idea of what army to lock in. The High Elves are a unique and awesome army. Many people lauded them as the best in competitive play back in 8th edition. However, who cares about that? These dudes are skilled, ferocious warriors, and they have an eternity worth of fighting experience under their belt. Often considered an army of elite warriors, there is nothing you can't do without perfection. However, this perfection and martial prowess came at a cost for the High Elves. The High Elves, you see, are one of the oldest races and have withstood some of the world's darkest hours and sacrificed so much to be able to have the world we see today. With their culture being that of nobles and city-states, the High Elves operate and live under a principality, where princes and lords of the land will muster their troops to go to war, and then collectively these states will come together to form an army. At the head of the High Elves is the Phoenix King and his wife, whose title is Everqueen. There is, however, one major wound to the High Elves' pride and martial bearing, and that is the imposed schism between the Drukhari and their haughty selves. In this video, we will talk about the First Chaos War, briefly discussing the relationship of the High Elves to their kin, the Drukhari. Again, this video serves only as an introduction and is a baseline for you to determine whether this army is right for you. The coming of chaos. It is known that the Lizardmen stand as the oldest race in the Old World, but following them would be the creation of the Elves, and it was said that the Elves were able to learn their magic directly through the gods themselves. Following the Elves would be Dwarves, known to be craftsmen and dull with magic. After, it would go on to be said that man was the last race to be made with delicacy and time. In this, the Old Ones created man to be highly adaptable. Following them, and hastily created, was the Halfling and Ogres. It is within these creations that cause the Immaterium to flow, turning into roiling seas of emotion and energy. Because of this roiling energy, the Old Ones' polar gateways exploded, throwing green meteors and shooting warp dust all over the place. This green warp stone and dust were things of change and magic. Later it would be uncovered that they would carry with it chaos, and that chaos would be about mutation, where we would see some normal creatures become perversions of themselves and mutate into what we know as monsters, such as chimeras, hippogriffs, and beastmen. Rumors of ratmen began to arise but were quickly squashed as myth given to hyperbole in literature. With their portals collapsed, the Old Ones would go on to disappear and never be seen again. It is unknown what fate had befallen them. First to be hit by chaos would be the Lizardmen, who were able to hold their own until chaos swelled in power, reducing the Slaan's magic abilities, which were key to keeping the demons at bay. Around this time, demons would go around kind of slapping Lizardmen and dwarves around. It was in this dire hour where High Elf mages would land on the Old World to investigate chaos and see what was up with it. Kaldor, a mage from Ulthuan, would meet a dwarf called Grimnir, and the ambassador, Kaldor, would soon flourish a friendship between the races. The dwarves would be besieged, fighting well but losing 7 holds. In the end, Kaldor would drop a spell that would drain the whole land of magic, causing it to banish the demons back to the shadows from whence they came. In this, they would understand that chaos was tied to magic. We would be introduced to a super elf called Anarian. He would go on to beat wholesale demon butt and would huck himself into the fire of Assyrian and be deemed worthy of the title Phoenix King. That wasn't enough though. He would then take up a super dope sword called the Sword of Murder, damning his soul in exchange for his people and the world. Throughout the duration of this world, his family would be considered dead, and he would grieve by finding a new wife because he wasn't going to sit out in eternity by himself. His wife would be known as Marathi, and he would have a son who would go on to be known as Malekith. Now Kaldor and Anarian would work together to keep chaos back long enough for Kaldor to create the magic vortex with his other homies and suck up all of the magic, bringing some order to chaos. With this, however, Kaldor would get sucked into the magical vortex along with Anarian, resulting in chaos temporarily being defeated. Super condensed, but we get the gist. After this, the Elves would know peace. Malekith would go on to colonize the known world, and the Elves would be pretty content, until rumors would be started about some creepy cult stuff over in Nagrith. Something with shirtless ladies and utter hedonism. But it was chalked up to be not a big deal, until Marathi would show her hand, turning most of Naggaroth, except for House Anar, and others loyal to the king. She would start a civil war. Malekith would be called back and would detain his own mother, and the rebellion would be considered to be over, only to find out during a council of princes all High Elf leadership would be assassinated, and Malekith's body would be found burnt to a crisp by the Assyrian flames, deeming him in fact very unworthy of the title Phoenix King. After his failed ascension, Malekith would be entombed in magical armor to help him carry on his life. Following this unfortunate turn of events, Marathi would go on to be set free, and the Elves would fall into disarray, fractured and leaderless, allowing the Dark Dark Elves to win battle after battle. In this hour, a new Dragon King would arise and take the surname of Kaldor. Out of respect for Kaldor Dragon Tamer, we would go to know these Dark Elves as Drukhari. These Dark Elves were the mirror opposite of the High Elf culture. Where the High Elves displayed pride, the Dark Elves showed arrogance. Where there was martial pride and humbleness, the Dark Elves portrayed brutality and cruelty. Where the High Elves showed honor, the Drukhari answered back with disgrace. The feud between the two would not only taint the Dark Elves, but also bitter the High Elves, making them more cold and heartless to the outside eye. The High Elves had to cope with the change and death of their virtuous selves. Towards the end of this story, Kaldor would finally clash with Malekith and his forces. Kaldor, a general with virtue and right on his side, facing a shameful and arrogant warrior whom he once held in high esteem as a fellow elf. In this battle, Kaldor would stand triumphant, breaking the back of Malekith's army and bringing Malekith much humiliation. Angry and enraged, Malekith devised a plan to destroy the magical vortex which kept back chaos. Malekith would be betrayed by Urthian of Ular, and Kaldor would be notified of this plan. Kaldor would again confront Malekith. This confrontation would bring the spirits of those mages who constructed the vortex forward, and they would reseal it. With Malekith defeated for this time being, the magical vortex safe, one would assume that all would be right. That couldn't be further from the truth. Another sad twist of events, Ulthuan would be hit with magical backlash, causing major tsunamis to forever alter their homeland, further taking more precious elven lives. Dude, so we had a lot of backstories on these guys. We're left with a fractured empire constantly fighting between the two, trying to seize power over the other. The High Elves are a withering race, however they will not go into the dark quietly, having literally sacrificed everything for the old world. They will meet death as an equal and go out with a sword in hand and an arrow notched in their bow. Thank you for joining me today at this introduction to their army breakdown. On Tuesday and Wednesday we'll talk about their units and how they play on the tabletop. I look forward to seeing all of you this Tuesday. Lastly, Asav are cool at the time of recording, won in the poll, and his lore video will be out Monday. Thank you all for stopping by, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Peace.